and it's welcome to another episode of Writer on the Road. I am very privileged to have with me today the beautiful Sherrie from Germany, and I'm most excited to be talking to someone so very, very beautiful. If you could see her now, listeners, she's got the most beautiful smile on her face. She's young, she's vivacious, and she's on the other side of the world. And that's only the beginning of her story. And I hope you're as excited to hear her story as I am to be chatting to her. Sherrie, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that opening. Mom of two small children, like, someone thinks I'm beautiful. Thank you.
Sherrie has one of the most exciting lives, and now I've had a pretty restless week at school, and then I got on tonight and I was looking at Sherrie's biography, and she just happens to have ridden a motorbike to some of the most exotic places, and I'm going to get her to tell me about that right now. But before I do, when Sherrie tells you about this adventure, and I believe this latest adventure, one of her books was released in 2016, so it's very recent, but there are other motorbike books as well. She set off on her first adventure on one of these big, long overland motorbike trips, and she'd had her motorbike license for a week. So that will give you some idea of what this lady's like. The other thing that may give you some idea about what this lady's like is when I was reading her biography, we have to close our ears if she says naughty words occasionally because she gets so enthusiastic and carried away. But we don't care because we're all adults and we just listen on in awe. Go for it, Sherrie. Tell us all about you.
Okay, I'm so glad you actually did that little disclaimer because sometimes my little small children, I'm like, shh, don't say that. Just because mommy says it doesn't mean you can say it. But yes, so in fairness, that book that actually just came out, the Turkey book, Riding a Bike to Turkey and Back, that was the last book I published, but it was actually the first trip I did. So I kind of jumped around with the writing and whatnot. But to be fair, I had been on a motorcycle for oh my God, it was almost 2 years before I met Patrick in Korea, and I was teaching English and he was on a world trip. And this is before I'd actually heard about this whole Obi-Wan Kenobi doing his world trip and whatnot for the long way round. And he said he'd started in Germany, he'd gone through Russia and Mongolia on the motorcycle. And I just thought, oh, that's amazing. I would love to do something like that. And then he said, why don't you come with me? So I told my mother I was going to visit a friend in Argentina, and I went with him. And we did 6 months through South America, and then I was hooked. So even though it was only 1 week before I jumped on the bike myself, I'd actually done 6 weeks on the back through South America. So it wasn't quite the challenge I thought it was going to be. It was more of the, Sherrie, you don't actually know how to ride. But that's okay. You're on back. It's the same thing, isn't it?
I'm not sure that would actually stop you not knowing how to do something, having had a bit of a fossick around. I'm pretty sure that you're open up to pretty much anything. And later on in the podcast, we're going to move on to Sherrie's new adventure, and this is what attracted me to her in the first place. Sherrie's going to go and live the lifestyle that I have already lived and had to give up, and she's going to go sailing off into the wild blue yonder on her very own yacht with a very own handsome hero. The difference between Sherrie and I is she's taking children as well. So I wish her all the best. And a dog. Oh my gosh. So I wish her all the best with that. But Sherrie's book was actually called Keep the
Shiny Side.
Let me have another go. Keep the Shiny Side Up, a motorcycle adventure from Germany to Turkey and back. And the blurb goes, a summer of adventure riding from Germany to Turkey via Romania and Bulgaria and back via Greece and the Balkans. Sherrie, that's some kind of trip.
You know, it was amazing, and it was about 3 months we did it. And as we left, the point was, again, if you don't do it, if you don't set a date, it's never going to happen. And that's one thing I find, that even with writing, if you don't set a date and make time, it's never going to happen. So it doesn't matter what your dream is, whether it is to set off on a sail on the yacht, or if it's to take the motorbike, or if it's to get published. Someday is never. And I really find that to be so true. And I think too, like when I think about these motorcycle trips that I've done, the fact I've had 3 accidents on 3 major motorcycle trips goes to show that, like if I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm not a good writer. Patrick is an amazing writer. His entire family rides. They've been riding since they were he was 17. His dad every year does a motorcycle safety trip. They do a family trip based around this 2 or 3 days of training. They are excellent writers, but I am not. I am not. And we don't have a lot of money. I was just after finishing my grad studies when I did the Turkey trip. So it's not even you need to have a lot of money to do these things. And it's the same with writing. You don't need, there's a way you can do it that can be perfect. And I sometimes think that thinking being perfect is a way of protecting yourself from never having to do it. Whether it's be writing that book or it's taking that trip, it's okay, well, I need a bit more time. I need a bit more money. I need a bit more practice. I need to find out more about these countries. Just do it. And you know what? You'll improve along the way. And I think that's the problem with most people's dreams and doing these trips. It's not that it's so fantastic I've done it. It's just the fact I finally said, okay, enough is enough. I did it. There's nothing else special about it other than saying, there's my date. Now I tell people about it. Same with the sailing trip. We told people April 1st. We have to do it now. You're still here come March 31st. People looking at you going, well, aren't you leaving yet? And you're like, no, it's going to be another month, another 3 months, another 4 months. You kind of look stupid. So you tell people what you're going to do and you get it out.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, and one of the pieces of advice that has come through to me very, very strongly is start before you're ready.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is huge because, even with these books, I actually started publishing them on I think it was our third big trip. So we did 2 big trips. I mean, big trips for most people, but for us, they were tiny trips. So we did 3 months in Turkey and then 6 weeks in Iceland. And then we went on our year-round world trip where we did the same trip that Patrick had done for 18 months beforehand, which started in Germany, went through Mongolia, Russia, and then in Asia. And then in Asia, we were listening to a lot of podcasts, started listening to Joanna Penn, started reading blogs about people self-publishing, and Patrick was really pushing me. And he was like, you've had so many trips, you enjoy writing. I was writing for the independent.ca, it's a local newspaper online back home. And he's like, why not just write the book? Why not do it yourself? Why not get it out there? But I was really, even though I was the same thing, like I said, motorcycle ride does not terrify me. Putting my name in a book and putting it out there, that terrified me. That was so scary for me. And he really pushed me. And finally, I realized, okay, you know what? If you wait till you really are ready, it'll be the same thing as with the trips. You will never publish. You will never be ready. And so finally we stopped in Asia. It was somewhere in Thailand. And he said, okay, you know what? I have a month. He had to do some kind of program thing for work. He was like, you've got a month. Try it. Just bang out a draft and see what happens. And it was terrifying. That scared me more than when I flew my bike off a cliff in Mongolia.
As one does. The book that Sherrie may be referring to could be called Buying and Riding a Motorcycle Through Asia.
Yeah, actually, the first one we put out was the motorcycle handbook. So that's barely, it was only about maybe 40 pages long. The motorcycle handbook came out after I finished with Asia, but we actually put out this Buying and Riding a Motorcycle handbook just to get myself the feet wet, basically. 99 cents, 40, 50 pages long, just to see how I felt. It was like a pack list and how to save money and the attitude you need to kind of go on the trip. And then once I did that, it was like, okay, that wasn't so scary. It's, people weren't waiting outside my door with, clubs going, you stupid person for writing that. It was so bad. No one broke my legs. I didn't die. The reviews were really mixed. Some people loved it. Other people hated it. It was interesting, though. The Harley riders hated it. And the BMW riders really loved it. So I don't know if that has to do with our bikes or our attitudes. I have no idea. But it very much was how to do it on a shoestring. And the Harley riders did not like the book at all.
So that's technical motorbike speak for this type of motorbike, I guess. Not knowing anything about motorbikes, but very, very interested in your writing journey, because the things that you talk about are the things that we all feel. Oh, someone will laugh at us. The thought police are going to come round and arrest us, all those kinds of things. Now, I met Sherrie in a writing course. Sherrie mentioned very briefly Joanna Penn of the Creative Pen. Joanna, I heard tonight as I was driving home from school, she's up to about episode 280 or 90 of her podcast. I know she's had 1 million downloads, and she is the guru of gurus, and she hates the word guru, so she'll probably beat me up for using that word. But everything that Sherrie and I know between us and intend to learn for the next 100 years will come from Joanna. Now, what gets me about Joanna is, and this course that we're doing called Creative Freedom, is it's all about upscaling your business. So it's about not only just writing your book, but making a business out of it. And Sherrie, you're very active in that group, or you were very active in that group. Would you like to talk us through a little bit about what you've learned by doing that course?
Yes. Actually, the reason why I'm not so active the last month or so is because I'm finally finishing my first novel. So I'm putting Joanna's words into practice and staying off Facebook until this first draft is completely done. So basically what it is that I have, I think, 5, 6 books out, maybe 4 books and 2 little handbooks, such as the Riding in Southeast Asia and the Motorcycle Handbook, and then 4 books, 3 motorcycle books based on the trips, and then the Mango book, which is we never bought Mango, we got Mango in Thailand. We brought him along on part of the motorcycle trip, and then on the rest of the trip through North America.
I think Mango's a dog.
He is. Mango is a dog, named because I got him in Thailand after mango sticky rice. So, but basically, I was not committed to writing. It was still very much a hobby. If someone asked me what I did, I was like, oh, I do nothing, or I'm a student, or I teach English as a second language. I would say anything but writing, even though writing was what I wanted to do more than anything else, and how I was making my money up until that point. While we were traveling and I started putting the books out, I was very active in promoting and writing, and the books weren't making a lot of money, but they're definitely making enough money I could live in Southeast Asia. And then once we came back to Germany, I was pregnant. And so that basically I finished a translation of Patrick's book, Fernweh. And by then my baby was born, my daughter, and I really scaled back. And so it was about 2.5, 3 years where I had another baby, and I was kind of writing on the side, but it was coming less and less. And the turkey book was next week, next month, next year, who knows. And so finally I saw this on the Creative Pen that she was doing how to do writing as a business. And I said, you know what, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to invest in myself. And I'm actually going to do this course. Because I really find the same thing. It was really, like I said, it's hard to say writer. And it was also when I was home, I wasn't being serious about it. So my kids went to Kita, which is German daycare. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to write. And then I'd open my laptop and I'd kind of look around and go, okay, how can I do anything but write right now? I need to do wash, I need to do this, I need to do that. So I decided, okay, no, I need to do this course. And what I really liked about, even before she wrote the book, like Joanna just put out that mindset book, but the course also, in addition to having the business side and the tools you need, she also talked a lot about the mindset you need as a writer, as a business person, and to kind of put both hats on, or, change your hats. And that really, for me, drove it home that if I wanted to do this, I had to do this. I just knocked my laptop with my knee. Sorry, listeners. Yes, but if I wanted to do this, I had to be serious. Again, it was like the trips. I had to say, okay, I had put deadlines up. And it's okay if I was, a week or 2 or even a month out from my deadline. But I couldn't just say, okay, I'm going to write a book and then not actually write it. And I think that's what so many writers do. We're like, I don't want to say I'm a writer because I might be putting myself up with these people who are so big and so huge. I mean, I love Neil Gaiman, and to say that I'm a writer is like, I can't compare myself to Neil Gaiman. It's just not possible. But it's not. I don't have to be Neil Gaiman to be a writer. I can be me as a writer, and that's fine. But if I want to be a writer, it doesn't matter if I'm Neil Gaiman or just Sherrie or nobody. You will stay nobody if you don't put the words out. And that's one thing I found with the course, that she really helped me realize, okay, some deadlines, treat it as a business. If someone calls you and say, let's go for coffee, well, if I was at work, I wouldn't go for coffee with you at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So no, I need to get this work done. I need to get these words done. And I think it's something that most entrepreneurs find, is that time management is not easy. And that's one thing I liked about her course, was actually thinking about it as time management, writing as a business, and not just as a hobby player.
Yeah, and if anyone's wondering why the sound may or may not be going a little wonky, despite all my other podcasts having sound issues, as Sherrie's talking here, and I've just got to put this one up on YouTube, Sherrie has not sat still from the moment she started talking. Her hands are waving, she's vivacious, she is having the time of her life. And I should imagine, I can just see you flying around the world on the back of a motorbike. Probably not a good radio interviewee, but fantastic visually. This woman is made for television. And the other thing, and that brings us in, because Sherrie's touched on so many things I want to talk about tonight, or today, whenever anyone's listening to it. she's made this wonderful little video series on her website, and I'm curious about making video series because I'm looking at doing that myself for a course that I'm doing. And it's called the 7-Day Creativity Jumpstart, and the cover of the little book is beautiful. I think I'll put that up as somewhere on our website as well, or on our Facebook or somewhere. But Sherrie, tell us about these 7-day videos that you've created. They're beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, actually, they were very painful, in complete honesty. But basically, in addition, so I've decided after the motorcycle books that even though there's still at least one more book in it, and now we're about to go sailing, it's not what I want to write about at the moment. I want to write novels, but I also feel really want to write more workbooks on getting more people creative. So it's kind of like my pleasure project at the moment is writing these workbooks of how to be creative and let yourself go. And then my actual work is the novel business. So that's kind of how I'm balancing. And the 7-Day Creativity Jumpstart was just that I found that even with writing and whatnot, you often find a lot of creative prompts on how to write, but I think that it's actually much deeper. The problem is not that I don't have writer's block, or if you do have writer's block, it's just an excuse for something else, and you need to go a little bit deeper and find out what is really driving that. And so that's one thing I decided to do with the Creativity Jumpstart is like a series of questions of what's really blocking you. So you say you don't have time. Well, J.K. Rowling also didn't have time, and she managed to do it. So, you do have time. I'm not saying you're not busy, but there's probably something else that's blocking you. Like it's probably fear. It's probably my Facebook friends will see me and see the 1-star review and be like, ha ha ha, my bully from grade 10 is just coming back at 55 to be like, ha, you still suck. Like that's really the fear. It's not time. It's you're terrified. So, and I realized though too that with videos, I was terrified too. Like when it came to putting my money where my mouth was, okay, I could write, and I was starting to be comfortable with writing, but now all of a sudden when it came to videos, I was like, oh God, no, I could never do that. So I said, actually, no, you need to put your money where your mouth is. And so we will go along with this little workbook. I did a series of 7-day videos, and as you can see, also some of them were done in Canada, and the baby's in the background, and you're like, but no, it's done is better than perfect. It's your first thing out, and that's your thing. The amount of people are probably going to see your first stuff is so small, it doesn't even matter. What's important is that it's out, you learn, you grow, and then by the time you have actually enough people that go back and find this stuff, they're like, oh wow, she's really changed. They're not looking at you and going, ha ha. And truthfully, if they are, they have bigger problems. I think that's important to remember is that if someone's really looking at that going, loser, they haven't left grade 12. They're still stuck and you don't want to deal with them anyway. Most people are going either, wow, that's not as bad as she thought it was, or wow, look at how much she's improved with practice. I should practice too, and I will also get better. So that's what this series of videos was. It was a little bit for me, myself, to kind of get used to making videos because I would also like to do some videos and also to kind of put my money where my mouth was and just do it, start practicing, reach out a different zone of creativity that scared me. And it terrified me, trust me. It was so scary to hit publish on that.
As soon as I get off this podcast, I'm going to go and watch those videos now. You've got me intrigued. I have never seen
watch them.
I've never seen a woman with so much energy. I had another lady on the podcast, Joanne Dannon, and she was vivacious and enthusiastic and entrepreneurial, and she is going to go on and be successful. And I'm going to say the same thing about you. People with your energy level and your enthusiasm and your projects, you can't be anything but the most successful you can be because you're out there and you're pushing every button. You will get there, and I think people will go back and watch.
I live with a German
stuff.
That helps.
Oh, you have to explain that. I don't know about learning in German.
A lot. I can't keep my mouth shut, so when I say something, he's like, "Okay, you're doing it."
So the 2 children, how old are they?
They are now 3.5 and 1.5.
Oh, okay, so they're not really up in the talk zone yet, are they?
No.
All right. So another thing, I'm flicking through your blogs here, and I'm getting more and more distracted because there's more and more interesting things that are coming up on them. I notice you use smash words for some of your publications.
Yes, but I am, after doing Joanna's course, I've reached into Kobo Direct, and now I'm starting into Draft and Digital as well.
Yeah.
Again, these were things that I did not even really think about because I thought, okay, Amazon Smashwords, I got myself covered. And then doing her course, I was like, okay, even listening to the podcast, you're kind of like, oh yeah, well, maybe. And then, like I said, I did the course. I'm like, okay, no, it's not a maybe. Like, if you're serious about this, you need to expand.
Yeah. And one of the things that's coming through very clearly with you, Sherrie, is being serious, taking it as a business and throwing everything at it. Although God knows what that's going to look like with you if you throw everything at it. I mean, I just got to stand back and watch. But yeah, just to let everybody know, and it's a little bit of excitement for Sherrie and I. I'm having Kevin Tumlinson back. He was on my podcast a few weeks ago. He's off travelling around in his RV, so there's lots of adventurers out there. But he's also, I think it's the marketing director for Draft to Digital, and he's going to come back on the podcast and talk us through that process, hopefully, because I'm looking at moving to Draft and Digital as well for some of my books. So we need to know firsthand how to do that. So we'll get Kevin back on and we'll get him to help us so we know what to do. Now, Sherrie, let's keep moving along this most amazing list. She does have, you do have a podcast, is it? No, it's not a podcast, it's a blog called Unleash Your Adventures, Inspiring Travel Tales, just a spare time hobby, is it?
Yeah, well, this basically then is more of for family as well, to keep everything up, as well as a bit of then a blog. It's not my writer's blog. It also has things on it like, what we did last weekend, sailing. But we try to keep it strictly to the motorcycle and the sailing adventures. I actually need to put up for the last 2 weeks. We just went to Rügen and Bornholm and did our first overnight sail. So that will go up there type thing.
Okay, now I'm trying very hard not to talk about sailing just yet, because once I do that, all writing will go out the window.
Okay.
I can't help myself. We should just turn off and sit down here with a cup of coffee and talk all night. Okay, your Chasing Summer blog. What's that one about?
The Chasing Summer was the article series I was mentioning that I did for the independent.ca. So basically that's a local magazine, not The Independent, but basically Newfoundland only joined Canada back in 49. So we often talk about still being a Republic of Newfoundland and independent. And so this is a local Newfoundland online newspaper. And I actually know one of the editors. So when he heard I was going on the trip, the world trip, I would be a full year on the road, he asked me if I'd be willing to do a monthly article. And the point is that it was Chasing Summer. So we started in the summer and we never actually went into winter. We went from Germany to Russia, Mongolia. And then when summer started to end, that's when we went to Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia. And when that started to end, then we went back to Canada and spring was just starting in Canada. We bought a van in BC and then we did down to Texas and up to Newfoundland U. So we were chasing summer for a year. We never had to have winter. It was nice.
Now, one would assume that having 2 children would slow this pair down, but obviously not. They're just going to take their home with them in their yacht. Just go. Now, one of the things that Sherrie and I were talking about, or Sherrie mentioned in one of her emails, is how is she going to ride on the yacht? And she was looking at dragon dictation.
Yes. Because this was one thing also, again, in terms of, financial abilities and everything else, our boat was a fantastic buy, but one of the things is it didn't come with a nice big table. So we've got a place for the kids to sleep, a place for us to sleep. We have a tiny saloon, living room type space for the boat, and we have like a nav station across from the kitchen, but there's no actual nice, proper, sit-down, comfortable writing space. And so the last 2 weeks we were sailing, and that was also my test to see how writing went, because last year we did 2 months, but I had an infant. He was 3 months old, so I was like, okay, not going to happen. But he's a year and a half now, so we could try the writing period, and it wasn't working. It was really cramped, and so I decided, I've heard so much about dragon that I think in order to continue to write on this journey, I'm going to have to, at least my daily practice. You can always go to a cafe or something, but again, to be serious, it has to be a daily practice, or at least a weekly, Monday through Friday. Then, I think I need to do the dragon dictate in order to keep my neck, my shoulders, just keep them cramping up, and also to keep wanting to do it. Because if it's something that's going to be painful, not just emotionally, but also physically, you're definitely not going to do it. So I haven't tried it yet. I don't know if you use it or not, but I've heard many good things about it. So I thought maybe it's a good way to kind of be able to stand up on the boat and still be able to write.
Yeah, we have a bit of a problem here in Australia in that the professional package, whatever the new Butte one, we can't get it here in Australia yet.
Oh,
So we're still
same.
waiting. So we're sort of out here in the boondocks. We don't have all those wonderful countries to just pop around.
But I never think of Australia like that, you know? Like, I always think it's like Canada but sunnier. You know?
Well, it is in Brisbane, and we don't have many rockies and snow. We don't have any bears, well, not
Okay,
deadly
that's
ones.
nice. You have spiders or something, don't you?
Oh, look, we have our own version of deadly animals. So,
Yeah, exactly.
tell me about your fiction.
So this is brand new. I've just started. I've got the short story kind of lead in just finished, but I'll release both the short story and the first one at the same time. Probably in 2 to 3 weeks should be ready. But my fiction is completely different from my obviously personal motorcycle memorable travel, and I'm actually writing about historical fiction for samurais. But yeah, exactly. Samurai historical fiction. I can't help it. I love Japan. I lived there for a year and I really love samurais. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going back to Japan anytime soon. And I really, really, really want to. So instead, I'm going back in my head, writing, going through the pictures, going through the music, sometimes going out to eat, not as often as I would like, but trying to recreate it. And it's actually really a lot of fun, I have to admit. It's at first it was very painful. This is something that's actually been rattling around in my brain since Thailand. So this is now 4.5 years that this project of, because it's not completely historical fiction, there's also a lot of supernatural, incorporating Japanese folklore into it. But it's been in my mind now for almost 4 years, and I finally sat down to write it. And again, I was so scared to write it. It was so terrifying. And now that I'm actually in the middle, almost finished, it's fun. It's fantastic. But starting was so hard, like almost impossible hard.
Yeah, making stuff up. Now you mentioned some amazing research there that I started to write it down, but you spoke so quickly. You mentioned the
Oh, sorry.
folklore. No, I'm just amazed. So you can't just sit down and write fiction unless it's a contemporary romance, and apologise to us contemporary romance writers. You can't sit down and do something with that much depth overnight. So obviously this project is taking you a while, but you're putting it out in 2 weeks.
Well, I'm not putting it out in 2 weeks. I'm hoping to have it finished within the next 2 weeks. That's why I'm no longer on the group as often as I was. So basically, when I first started this project was almost 4.5 years ago. And the research, my background academically is actually I have a master's in history. So the research, I'm a research geek. I love it. And that's also sometimes a problem, I think, for a lot of historical fiction writers. If I'm researching, I'm doing the work. Jein, you know, I love that word in German. Yes, but no, and it's true. You kind of think there's so much research you need to do, but there's also so much research that you begin to use as procrastinating. And so I've actually been reading about samurais and Japanese fiction and folklore, sorry, and thinking how I'd incorporate it into this fiction. And I've got notes and books and galore for about 3.5, 4 years. And then finally, like I said, after joining Joanna's course last year, I realized, okay, I need to start making dates. And then so that it's all there. I just need to put it out. And then I actually met Jules Horn, who's also a great writer, and also on the Creative Freedom group. And she was looking for an accountability partner. And I said, you know what, I'm up for it. And there was actually one other woman who was also interested. But then when she realized we're talking like daily and also weekly and doing this 21-week year, I can't remember if it's 21 or 22 weeks. But either way, we're talking about like in 4 months doing what most people do in 1 year. She was like, okay, maybe not. But me and Jules have been doing it. And I have to say, I've missed a lot of my deadlines. I wanted this fiction book to be finished for the last 21-week year. So it should have been done about 2 months ago. But the fact is that even though I quote unquote missed the deadline, the book's almost finished. So in 6 months of actually saying I want to write it and will write it and having accountability and putting deadlines and writing every day, I've done more than in 4 years of reading and talking about it. So
So
yeah.
everybody, I couldn't even write that down, but I will get it transcribed and I will put it up there for us. Sherrie has just summed up everything that is important about being serious about your writing life. You must set goals. You must
Yeah.
have daily, whether it be word counts, whether it be something. I'm using John Lee Dumas's The Freedom Journal. I think I mentioned last week.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, it would be, except And as I said, I'm up to about week 6 or 7 of this podcast now, and I think I filled in 5 days now. But my intentions are good, and I know it's there, and it reminds me, do something every day. That's my little motto. My little motto is do something every day. But I'm amazed you have 2 young children, 1 and 3. You've got your non-fiction stuff out. You've made your videos, and all the while you've been researching this novel that I'm actually really excited about because it sounds fantastic.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so just let me know when it's out, and we'll come back on and we'll do a little promo. What's your word length?
Well, as of right now, it is 60,000, but there's some gaps. So I'm guessing by the end, it'll be between 75 and 80.
Yeah,
but there'll be 3 books.
Yeah, and that's a good length novel. Are you going to do 3 80,000-word books?
Yes, yeah.
All before you go away next April?
No. This will not be happening. I'm hoping to have the second book drafted before we go away. That's my goal. Second book drafted. We'll see what happens. Okay. But I actually I shared this also on the an interesting podcast by, I think it's a Rocking Self-Publishing podcast.
Oh, yes. And excellent. I went and listened to it after you spoke. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm trying to also take a little bit what this guest said. I cannot remember the exact, but maybe you can put it in the show notes or whatever. But he wrote that basically he let the audience decide if it was good or not. So he kind of let go a little bit of quote unquote quality, tried to really just get it out there, fix it up so it was really good enough, and put it out and said, okay, do people like it or not? And then people who were like, it's really good story, but I don't like the editing. Okay, well, next time I'll work more on the editing. And then he went from like 0 books in November to something like 100,000 within 8 months, something insane. But I do not promote, do not write quality books. But I think, again, part of the problem is being so hung up on being perfect. And that's one thing that I also started doing with this book now, is I finally going, you know what, just tell the story. You can go back and edit it afterwards, but stop being so hung up on getting a perfect story out the first time, let alone the 10th time. And because there'll never be a perfect story. You can always go back and improve. You can always go back and put a bit more foreshadowing in, or something extra there, or some little treats to the reader. But in the end, they'll never read it if you don't get it out. And so this is also what I've kind of been using from this podcast. Every now and then I go back and remember what he said, which was, okay, make sure it's good enough, but don't waste 3 or 4 months making it quote unquote as perfect as it can be, when in the end, maybe you put it out there, no one even wants to read samurai fiction, and it doesn't matter how good or bad it is. If no one wants to read it, they're not going to buy it. So you might as well then put the project out, and if there's some kind of traction, then I'll continue with the second book. If there's absolutely no traction, then I'll be like, okay, I need to write something else. And maybe I'll keep the samurai in my head for my stories at bedtime type thing. But yeah, I'm not... Sorry, I was going to say, also thinking about it in terms of a business, I've decided that I'm not going to cling to things. I mean, my workbooks for creativity, I really enjoy those. Those are so much fun. And they're almost like pet projects. If they make money or not, I don't care. These are strictly for me. But the fiction, I enjoy writing fiction.